Hello, we're starting.
Hey, oh my God, I don't have a bald spot. Let's fix
Oh,
that.
like,
The heck?
like they're not here to talk about your bald spot.
Oh
We're
my
here to talk
goodness.
about flesh and blood. No, okay. Now Blake's gonna fix it. We need wardrobe stat.
Look from that side over. Okay, so today, what's interesting is we got ourselves a matchup that doesn't happen everywhere. I don't think, unless you're like, oh yeah, everyone has two Bravos. But SoCal is known as a Bravo area,
Mm-hmm.
and there's only two Bravos here, or is there more? Let's see metagame. Two
There.
Bravos. That means we're gonna do both of them. It's the only one that doesn't move at all.
It doesn't move yet?
No, this is the only one of the assets that doesn't work.
We need to get production on this. We need
No,
to
no. It's a LSS thing. Like
Oh,
from
no.
LSS, these are the ones that don't breathe.
All right.
So
well,
this looks very static.
it's okay. It's a great card. They both have their fun shiny hammer.
Yeah.
You have Thomas Briggs versus Brian. Yeah, I don't know how.
Gutierrez.
Gutierrez. Appreciate it.
Dude, I grew up in a very Hispanic part of Texas, so I
I
know
just-
all this stuff.
Not Arizona.
Not Arizona. I didn't grow up in. Oh my God, I didn't grow up in Arizona. I'll go
but
there if I have to.
looking at the bling, you got the Marvel Bravo, you got the CFs. These guys are Bravo.
We're pile shuffling up the area.
Enjoyers.
That's crazy.
Yep. Everyone's different. Yeah. So Thomas Briggs, a known Bravo main throughout the community. Lots of reps on Bravo. That's all I've ever seen him play. I don't think I've ever seen him play anything else. Very, very strong knowledge. That's why he's up here in the final table.
And you're like, why are we watching a 2-2 matchup? We're watching a 2-2 matchup because if Thomas loses as the old guard Bravo,
Old guard.
he's going to have to throw his deck in the trash.
That's not. I don't think he said that.
We need some new health too, Christine.
That's true. And then you have Brian. Brian, I've been seeing a little more regularly. He's been a couple more AGs before this. I think he's been, hopping around in Warrior. Now he's on Bravo. He's finding his home, but it's always great to see new players make a name for themselves and shine with, the deck that they feel most comfortable with. And having a Marvel Bravo, I imagine he's very comfortable on Bravo.
Right. And the other thing he was looking for, to immediately tell you the other thing he was trying to do, he was like, does anybody have a Eye of Ophidia?
Yeah.
And we're like, no. He's like, I want to play Sandscour Great Bow with Zelia
Yeah.
tomorrow. And I was like, oh my gosh. So who knows if the Sandscour Great Bow mindset comes into this at all.
And I've heard about the Sand Scour list. I haven't seen it play.
Well, me neither. So I should have watched that deck tech, but I knew nobody was going to play it here unless if there is
I've
somebody.
been seeing like Azaleas at the top tables. So they've been doing what they do best. There's 7 Lexies here, so Azaleas apparently gonna eat the Lexies. So
Well, who was ready to eat the azaleas then?
hopefully Katsu's.
Right. Is that how that works?
I don't know, but the food chain is very strange with this new meta for sure. Is he pitching things or he just has that sitting there?
So he's going to do some tectonic.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So if you're unfamiliar with Bravo, you've probably only been watching Flesh and Blood for a little bit. What's going to happen here is we're going to be using our tectonic plating to basically pitch to get a seismic surge and then swing a hammer. This is going to happen a lot. What's going to be crazy is we're going to pummel to get ahead, or we're going to be doing like better on-hit effects.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a Bravo mirror in a very long time. That's why I thought this would maybe be interesting for people at home, because it's like we have the best attackers and the best blocking in the game, and it's like, does your best attack line up with their unmovable?
Mm-hmm.
Does your crippling crush come down when they don't have it?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a thought process of a hammer for 6 is very good into pretty much every deck besides Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
So the Anothos kind of gets nullified by the other person sitting across with two block 3s as well. And somebody, like, maybe the whole thought process of we like the word spice in this community for some reason, but the spice is what will set you apart from the other Bravo player.
I think knowledge, like you have to be comfortable in this match. You have to have played it before. You can't go in this matchup not knowing the mirror, because I think like good Bravos who know this mirror were able to cheat ahead the damage. Like you saw Brian putting out a pummel early in the opening hand. He may know that like guaranteed damage is better than no damage, especially with all these immovables and armor that exist in the deck. So it's going to be kind of like those small little tricks, like you said, leaking those damage sneakily. That's going to be. I've seen people win by double pummeling an Anothos. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they both pilot. It's going to go back and forth a lot. There's going to be defensive one end, go back to offensive, and they're going to have to build up. Bravo has to wind up his big turns make the seismic surge, make the dominate.
And we have the hero power coming down. That's going to cost 2 extra, which gives your next attack of 3 or more, or 2 or more. I think it's 2 or more. Gives it dominate. Maybe it is 3 more because they don't do it on Command and Conquer ever. So it's 3 or more, gets dominate. This is disable. We're going to give all of our equipment to avoid getting rid of the card in our arsenal out, which I think that means that's something juicy. And if this flips over to be a pummel, what is it called? Nope, not that one either. Crippling Crush.
Crippling Crush, okay.
It's going to be gross.
Protecting it, we'll see. Lining up a Seismic Surge currently. Kind of a Zealous Belting. Zealous Belting is one of those Bravo builds I say allows you to go wide and then probably swing for a hammer. This is optimal damage. It's really hard to block with just one big immovable. I've been really liking seeing this Zealous Belting in most Bravo lists with the Rouse of Ancients and things like that.
Because 5 plus 6 is 11, which is pretty good, pretty much better than most of your attacks.
That's very true. And very awkward to block, too. It gets over a perfect, sink below. It gets over, you have to get 2 cards to pretty much block Zealous Belting correctly or armor, which is fine. That's what you want. As a big factor in this matchup is definitely their armor loss as the game goes on. And currently we see definitely big armor loss from Thomas and Brian as they're looking to fight for tempo. But they might be more conservative as the game goes on because having that armor later on for big dominate attacks is super important to not lose to Bravo, Bravo hero ability.
Because I think right now I would rather have 2 more block for my arm and my shoe back than 3 health. I know that means you wouldn't have this play available to you of 11 damage off of that. So I'm kind of being like, oh, it just would have been a hammer swing and then it gets immediately eaten up by that defense reaction. And right now it's like a Nothos for 4 is not strong enough, so you are getting ahead a little bit. And then it's not even a hammer swing. So we're going to Seismic Surge. And now Thomas looks like a genius for blocking 3 with his equipment. Gets him ahead. There's no hammer return. And now I get to full 4-card hand with an arsenal.
Definitely robbing the tempo. Health relatively close still pretty even game. Once again, managing that health the difference is super important. You can take damage, but you don't want to take too much damage where you'll get left behind. So blocking super important here. Also being offensive with your hammer, getting that chip in, going to be super important. Disable coming out.
I think what's interesting when you're playing against a Bravo that has 2 floating, you're assuming that there could be a pummel. Because if they don't have a pummel, they could have used the hero power to give this dominate, and then that will come through of 7 minus 3 would be 4 crush. All the math is very interesting when you look at how they designed this first set. It's very cool.
Yeah.
If you have a defense reaction, you're fine. If you don't, you're screwed.
If you drafted Sync, you're great.
Yeah.
If you didn't get Sync in your draft, I'm sorry. This is going to hurt a lot. Yes, 7's such a great break point. You don't want to use armor on this at all. You do have Iron Hide, Iron Raw booties looking. Oh, nope. Just going to put
7 there.
Reading a pummel coming out. Into a Sync.
Right.
Perfect cover. So that's where you have the little additional coverage there, is to make sure that if it was for a red pummel or a yellow pummel.
I think as a Bravo player, every time you see a Sync, you're like, oh, dang it. But it's one you don't have later.
It's true.
So it is coming down to who can leverage their defense reactions better, because that's where the math favors you greatly.
I think it's absolutely correct. And trading a Sync for a pummel is really strong for keeping your tempo. Swinging hammer, great.
It's interesting. We got people smiling. We got people wearing hats.
There's a lot of hats in this,
Love to see
frame. It's all good. Hats are great.
Terrace Sunder is going to be a power card.
Does he have a big staunch or a big immovable at this time?
Because what that says is we're going to add 1 to our Nothos hammer because it's going to go 4 to 5, but because there's 2 cards in the pitch zone to 3 or more, it's going to go to 7.
Yep.
And now if any point of this hits, it's not a crush, any point of this hits, we're going to make our opponent discard 2 cards, which takes my next turn for my opponent be actually awful. That was amazing. We had both of our players move Terra Sunder to the other side of the board to be like, what are we doing here? We got 1 block, 2 block, 3 block.
Giving the armor on the Terra Sunder here early. Voting to use armor, not necessarily later on to get you that 1 bonus turn, but wanting to continue staying above water here in the mirror and trying to fight for that initial tempo still. Brian is not going to give up without a fight.
It's very interesting. whenever you get out of your equipment, you're done with your equipment, you're kind of in top deck mode when it comes to defense.
Correct.
Of you're only as good as your did you draw a staunch or a sink off the top of your deck.
Correct. I think that you just try to avoid getting into that kind of Bravo bully style of like, oh, you have a spinal, hit me. Oh, you have a crippling, and then you just kind of get into that mode. So I think they're trying to like fight for it to where they just stay out of the range of their power cards, but are still presenting good vanilla damage.
We're swinging. This is definitely a Nothos for 6 because both of those.
Correct.
Showtime being 3 cost, I think, is one thing where you're like, wow, that's a really bad card when you think about it, but it's there to help your Nothos, not to be a good value play.
Mm-hmm. Is there a pummel coming out? There's 2 floating. Every time I see 2 floating on a Guardian side, I'm like, they have it. They have a pummel.
Don't pummel.
There we go.
I think it's interesting of why are we pummeling a Nothos?
Just getting the guaranteed damage, it seems to be the method. So this is going to be taking 7 damage, so 26. Pretty powerful with Bravo. Getting this guaranteed damage and, having access to dominate, still good. And they're just the red pummels I got through on Nothos.
Right.
So that's the maximum you want to do. He still has blue pummels. I don't know
We're
if
going to tear asunder
yellow
again.
Do I have the list in front of me?
You don't have the equipment to help you out here.
It's just blue pummels and red pummels.
So you could block from 3 from hand and then block with a sink below. I think one thing that's funny about Thomas that I mentioned about him whenever he's on stream, he's a graveyard searcher. Definitely somebody that has a shovel and he's always looking to see what's in there.
Yep.
Oh my God, what's in your banish zone? Tell me about it. He wants full access to everything so he can know exactly what he needs to do to figure this out.
Freedom of information. Oh, seeing a Zealous come out of Brian. Like I said, popular Guardian card. I like it. Some Guardians run it, some Guardians don't, but I'm looking at their list right now. They're pretty close. 1 remembrance each, so that's pretty cool.
Is there sigils in both or just
I will say Thomas has the Grandeur in his list.
Well, that's going to suck one time whenever he has it at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
I maybe would side that out in this matchup because you don't want to get
2
caught
blue
with your
movables
pants down.
under.
2 unmovables?
2 blue immovables. For Brian. 3 red immovables.
Okay, fingers crossed here. We are going to pop the seismic, swing, pitching a blue. We're not going to be making a second seismic, so I think that means if you're paying attention at home, that kind of means I have a powerful red card in my hand that I don't want to use at all. That'll go in my arsenal for next time. Is usually what that means, or signifies, we could say. Which is, I think, anytime you go, okay, a 4 damage swing, and I get it exactly with its defense reaction, that's going to happen maybe 5 or 6 times a game per person. This will be Chokeslam, a red one.
Blue one? What was it look like?
Chokeslam can't be 10. It's 8 and 6, I think, is the red, and then blues.
Okay, it just looks blue from this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some shiny ass one.
The alpha Chokeslams.
What do you think when somebody shows up with alpha cards and it's like,
I mean, they're just.
Look at my unmovable, it's pink. And you're just like, oh my God.
I mean, it's just expression, man. What do you.
It's stop expressing yourself and just play normal cards, guys. I'm trying to beat you. Yeah, I get that layer. It's so funny that Bravo doesn't breathe over here either.
Oh.
That was kind of breathy. Sorry about that, guys.
Two block. You're gonna have a block on some pretty powerful cards, CNC and Pulverize. Pulverize being really great into this matchup. Really, like I said, those things where it's like big damage that gets guaranteed. So having a block with it doesn't always feel great, but he can't heave into the arsenal, and that's like the one way to make it work.
To guarantee that, I think it's interesting. Brian's got the lead here, so endless hammer pressure isn't the worst idea. And maybe there's an idea of if there's a quote-unquote right thing to do in this matchup, and if somebody does something that's a little bit different than that, they maybe would go, oh, if you're not going to block this hammer, yeah, I'll flip this thing over again and just do 10 to you and take you to 16.
Yep.
And then it'll be like, oh my goodness. We got Kale in the chat. I think he's probably the person who knows the most about Bravo of all time. I don't know if he heard the word Bravo said twice and then got here as soon as he could, but I think this is definitely, I agree with that. If whoever loses their equipment probably loses the whole thing.
It puts you in a more vulnerable state. Like you said, as a Bravo, you're playing off the top of the deck. I think he was hoping to get him a little lower and pressure him. We'll see how this goes. Arouse the Ancients, though, is a big to help swing back damage for Thomas's favor. 7, go again. Shows the Pulverize,
It's
the
so
big
gross
boy.
how that interacts like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Just show 1 card instead of 2.
I mean, Pulverize is a great card. Brian shows his Pulverize, says I
So-
block, take 1.
And that's both of Brian's Pulverize going back-to-back blocks of got clumped in the shuffle.
Gonna set it for the next turn of the Seismic Surge. And CNC, very strong. How many floating? No floating. So you don't have to worry about the threat of pummel here, but CNC does demand an answer. You got him with the Sigil Solus. Up
That's
3.
a classic Bravo
Dude,
trick.
classic prank right there. You thought you had me.
And we know it's in Thomas's arsenal of this is a Pulverize. So it's up to Brian to get this out of there or hope Thomas draws
All reds.
2.5 reds.
Yeah, 2.5 reds. So going to pitch the blue. We're gonna do the swing hammer. Brian looking to continue to set up, hopefully for a next turn. Still getting chip damage is important.
I think it's
18.
crazy that Thomas is already under 20 of like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to leverage what I have. We got the Seismic Surge, so we need 9 pitch, which Grandeur of Valai is going to make one for next time, so he is keeping it in there. Grandeur of Valai plus 2 other blues will Pulverize, and this is the biggest attack in his deck. Not only is it 14 on this side, you're going to lose 4 on the next one. The hammer will come in for nothing.
Nothing. So it's very hard to block. It's very tall. It is interesting. So you're talking about the pummeling of, the Nothos, but both those red pummels on Nothos are the difference of health lead right now, or else they'd be at a tie game for the Reds.
True.
So that's the 8 damage, difference right now. So you're seeing, him having more of a comfortable health lead because of that, and early on just playing out instead of like trying to line up the threat, just playing out what he had and just trying to go as fast as he can towards the other person.
And giving up 2 cards like that, I mean, we see the Remembrance in hand, so that's something where you're like, I wish I could block my whole hand, but I have a Remembrance here.
Correct.
So blocking with the whole hand and only really getting rid of 6 damage feels pretty bad. But I think what's interesting is Brian, instead of waiting to, like, we're not going to swing a hammer next turn anyway because I got hit by Pulverize, so let me just use this time to Remembrance isn't the worst thing that could have happened to line up at that same time.
Yeah, he definitely was able to make his turn a little more productive because of that. Not having the cards in the right order is technically, you can see it kind of biting him a little bit. He's getting the non-blocks on turns which you want to block, and getting Pulverizes on turns that, you'd rather be attacking, but has to block with those. He's still stabilizing, still has that bit of a health lead, He just needs to find that opening to all in Thomas, and hopefully Thomas, bricks on a turn with just all defense reacts.
Which, anytime somebody has Command and Conquer and you got D-reacts, that's literally how this game works. I was going great, and then I drew the worst possible hand to block my opponent's BS that they had.
Another choke slam coming down.
I think every time it's like, there's a pummel here, Brian. Can you block this the right way?
This is the mind game I hate playing with Guardians. Like, man, that's too floating.
And usually most people are doing this without access to a bunch of defense reactions. And it is like, why did you not use your hero power?
Yeah.
That would have been strong. You would have gotten damage on me. Use your hero power instead, bud.
It costs money, and you want to continue the setup. Here's the pummel. This is the red one.
We've got more action.
This is a unmovable.
Pitching
A lot of things.
blue and a red.
He's pitching it this way in order to
Get the Crippling Crush out of your hand so it doesn't get discarded.
correct. Or not? Yeah, correct. And then also
Still took damage?
exactly.
12
Yeah,
versus 2 plus 6. So yeah, it took 4?
Yeah, 4 damage. You're looking at that lead, that pummel lead he gained from the Nothos early, just kind of now shore up. That was the time he bought himself. Now he's back to even exactly. If not, Thomas being obviously more ahead because Thomas has his armor still, which technically counts as extra life.
Right. Unless Buckle's around.
That's fair.
There's only 1 Buckle in Brian and 0 Buckles. We saw 3 Buckles in Craigslist earlier.
Yeah.
He said that's a wombo combo used to, if you can Buckling Blow and buckle it, you can get rid of Lexi's headpiece immediately.
Immediately.
If they don't take any, if they I'll take it. You just get rid of their headpiece.
And then it blows up their arsenal too, because once News Horizon destroys, that's pretty cool. Disable, dominated, no float.
And I think if you're playing Bravo or learning Bravo or want to learn Bravo or want to teach somebody Bravo, the difference between these two players right now is I pummeled my attack actions. I pummeled my hammer.
Mhm.
And some of these are, I'm not expecting you to pummel your hammer because the effect on pummeling the attack action is so good
Mhm.
that it's almost, you don't want to waste that pummel effect of, it doesn't really do anything to hammer besides buff instead of rip a card from my opponent's hand.
Just vanilla damage. We'll see. So he blocks with 1, takes 4. Chokeslam only affecting if you're going to be gaining attack from your card, which I don't think a lot of Bravo cards do. So he's going to pitch. He's going to swing. Does it affect hammer? I think it's just attack actions.
Yeah, it would be. It does. You can't pummel, which that's the thing.
No, I think this is attack damage, so his hammer should be fine. Chokeslam doesn't affect his hammer.
Right. Block 4, take 2. And now we're getting to the zone where you will be seeing hero powers used instead of not used. Because every point of unblockable dominate damage that'll happen will inch closer to death. Okay, so first Crippling Crush comes down. This is available because of the Grandeur of a Lie pitch.
Yep.
Which is sick.
Thomas was explaining this to me earlier, that this is the dream.
Dream of not being able to find 11 on the dice. It's a 5 and a 6. It's a 5 and a 6, bro.
He's figuring it out. It's new stream dice. Whole hand. You blocking 9.
Block 9. Take 2.
Best you can do. It's a big card.
We're hoping that this, if we're cheering for Brian, we're hoping the card in our arsenal is one of the 3 costs. That's maybe like a Chokeslam or something.
Zealous, maybe. Chokeslam.
is.
Wow,
There's the blue.
Blake. You know Bravo so well.
I mean, I don't want people to know that.
Yeah, you're secret Bravo, man.
It is something where I think both of these people are 2 and 2, but like when you see there's a bunch of Katsu and there's a bunch of Lexi at the top part of this,
Yeah.
you're like, well, can I play some of them? Can I stop playing Droma and just play these guys? Because we haven't seen one yet, but the Spinal Crushes are gonna just ruin half the field right now.
Tom's getting a little flustered here. Chokeslam's great because it also affects attack actions, not gaining attack. So that, for like pummels. So if he's trying to set up a pummel turn, then that would affect it. If that makes sense.
And now here's the actual part of I'm gonna use my equipment to pivot here instead of when we're both at 30 something.
Correct. Yep.
Because now it does matter of I inch you closer to death and I get one more turn of full 4 cards.
Yep.
And now can we do some pitch this to hero power this to do this? Crippling Crush dominated is Rivenergy, like or whatever.
Disgusting. Hopefully has an immovable to shore up some of the damage, but unlikely here. It's just gonna be a block 3 from hand and have to take the rest.
That's not great.
Yep.
That should be almost over. I think it's interesting is like, okay, why did you put a Bravo? We've seen Bravo over and over again. I think this is something where, what's going on? You can keep that one.
Yeah, he said you just keep that one. The other 2 go.
Okay. Lose imposing visage. I think it's like, why did you do this? I think I like this matchup of back and forth because it's something where we can inch towards death and it's very incremental, or maybe somebody goes for broke and it just backfires on them.
Yeah, no, that's the main thing is deciding when to be greedy and why. And I think Thomas was not as greedy with his armor early, and it's paying off because now he can be greedy later on and really threaten, just like the dominated attacks or the pummels here. This is terrifying. Seeing, this is gonna rack someone's mind. Hopefully, Brian has a defense react because they always have the pummel. This is a 3rd red pummel. Sigil of Solace +3.
I will survive.
Not gonna die, but it's still close.
We're going to heal. It was weird of like he's touching his card in his arsenal. I was like, oh no.
Down and dirty.
Oh, that's sick. Yeah, put it in there, guys.
Pummel the down and dirties.
So you do still discard, which kind of sucks because that sick play of surviving with Sigil is really cool until you're like, oh, but I have to keep playing.
And all now Thomas has to do is dominate 1 attack. And you do not have any armor left.
Hopefully that is
Arsenal.
a big-ass defense reaction.
Hopefully he didn't draw all reds.
There's a big-ass defense reaction in his hand.
Hopefully it's not all reds. Nope, that's 1 blue.
He said, "This is what's funny is like we're thinking like all you got to do is a big dominate, but literally they put these cards with the zealous belting to like stretch out your opponent and then do it, and then it's like,
oh, there's Pummel. Oh, has an answer.
What the heck? Thomas is on cruise control in his brain, and Brian's like, "Don't cruise control me. I've got stuff for you, man. I've got a third sigil coming. You still don't even know."
That was funny.
And I think that's hilarious because it's like that only happens if you go the zealous belting route instead of trying to dominate.
Well, you know, he played what his hand was, and his hand was exactly that. And Brian had exactly the answer. So there's nothing much you can do. Thomas was very surprised because he thought he had that, wrapped up right there. Surge, bravo.
Spinal. There we go.
GG. Thomas wins.
Briggsy.
So we saw, Thomas really expressing his knowledge and knowing when to use that last bit of armor because he did use some of his armor early. But he, saved some of it for that exact, that pivot turn as you saw. So it's okay to be greedy with the armor, when you think it's needed, but making sure that you have some at least for the end in order to pivot, especially in the mirror because things are going to be dominated, things are going to be really tall. You're going to need an outlet for it.
I think what's interesting too is Bravo's been. Oh, and what is his name? Thomas has been doing this for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And Brian switched recently, where I do think Brian's probably going to learn a lot from this matchup of like I don't know. I know Thomas has played the mirror 17 times. I don't know if everybody else has.
Yeah.
But it is something where like there's a good way to get behind, or there's a good way to like I think bluffing a sigil is really cool.
Yeah.
Unless you're 10 life behind, and then it's kind of like.
It's a little hard. It's definitely hard. I think you see people know these tricks or these things that you can do against certain matchups. Like that sigil thing I learned from AG. You come in here and watching and learn from Craig Pollock. I've seen him do it a couple times, and it's really fun when you can express that knowledge, that deep knowledge of, this interaction. And also it's good, I think he did his best, but I think we identified what the key factor was, and that was just using too much armor early. Mm-hmm. Disallowed him from being able to pivot later on.
I think it legitimately, it's something that I'm not trying to dog Thomas or Brian or anybody here, but it is something where what is better? Mm-hmm. Is it let's pummel a hammer to get 5 ahead of you, or is it let's pummel my crappiest attack action and turn it into like the best, like the better version of it?
Yeah.
Of a choke slam with a pummel on top. Is choking and pummeling, like that's way better than just did I do 4 to you and now you don't. It's like I did 4 to you and we're getting rid of a card from your hand. It's just so much better that it's worth disciplined Bravo's thought process of I have to wait until it lines up for an attack action.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You said the on hits are great. I think we're going to see more of this knowledge, shared as Thomas comes out. I know he's pretty active on social media and he'll be able to explain. I think more Bravo text. I think
some people are going to be like, well, we've known about this for 3 years in New Zealand. It's like,
yeah, well, that's New Zealand.
Well, sorry, but we haven't been here doing 3 years. I think that's an interesting match. We're going to take a short break and be back in literally 45 seconds to 2 minutes, probably 2 minutes.
To run.
See you in 2 minutes.
See ya.